Hey, what's up everybody? I'm finally back with another movie-related video going over my favorite sequels of all time. And after I do this, of course, I'll go back to my favorite movies of the 70s. But we'll just focus on all my favorite sequels, not necessarily in order. I guess you could say chronological order for the most part. I'm not like doing a top 10, but so we'll start off with The Godfather Part 2. And this is a lot of people would make on their top 10 list would be the number one sequel of all time. Out of any sequel ever made, a lot of people would put Godfather Part 2 hands down. And also even over the first Godfather. But it's just beautifully shot and just amazing cinematography. All of the actors are superb. The story, the way the movie flows from young Vito to present day Michael running the family and all that. It's just everything about it. It's just a beautifully shot film and one of the best of all time and probably the best sequel ever made. I know most people would have Godfather 2 as their favorite sequel of all time. Definitely. So, so just beautifully shot movie. Epic is epic as you can get. It would be Godfather Part 2. So we're starting off with the best. So next we'll go to another 70s movie that I already talked about on my favorite movies of the 70s, which is Magnum Force. And, which kind of underrated. I think aside from like Clint fans and action movie people that are fans of action movies, most people would put Magnum Force up there. I like Dirty Harry better than the Die Hard movies. I never was into the Die Hard movies. I like Magnum Force a lot. I think it's my second favorite next to the original Dirty Harry. Great story with the renegade death squad cops led by David Soul, who's a great actor, and it's probably one of my favorite Clint movies too, just in general, and kind of gets overlooked a little bit. But again, action movie fans and Clint fans know that this is a really solid sequel and probably one of the best Clint films there is, really. I love San Francisco. I love the setting in San Francisco. I love it. Just the Marin County and in the city, and at the end of the film where they go into that sort of Navy shipyard on those aircraft carriers at the end. I thought that was really cool. And so just a great Clint film, one of the best, and my favorite of as far as sequels go, and then my second favorite next to the original, of course. But after that, we're gonna go to horror sequels, and that's Jaws 2. And I think this is probably one of the best horror sequels ever made. Of course, it can't surpass the original Jaws, of course, but it still holds up pretty good, and it's compared to all the other horror sequels out there. I think this one is pretty damn good and not too bad. I really think it's has a fun story. I look at the Jaws movies more as an adventure rather than horror. But it still holds up pretty good, and I think it is one of the first horror films to have teenagers, like kind of centered around teenagers. Obviously Halloween, the original Halloween did that later on because they were both released in 1978. So yeah, Jaws 2 and Halloween, which centered around a lot of the victims were teenagers, although nobody really has sex in this one. I think Tina and Eddie almost were getting there, but then the shark attacked them already, so they didn't get a chance to get undressed and do the naughty and then get murdered like all the 300 Friday the 13th movies, and then like Halloween 5 and those ones you try to get freaky and then you get killed. That's the rules of the slasher films. But this isn't a slasher film. It's obviously, like I said, more of a adventure type film. But so you got the teenagers and all that kind of stuff, but still, other than that, it's really a pretty good sequel. I don't think it's that bad, and I really do enjoy it. It's fun. I really like Jaws 2. It's probably my favorite horror sequel next to Halloween 2, which I'll talk about later. But so next we have another Clint Eastwood movie with Any Which Way You Can, which is the sequel to Any Which Way But Loose, and I just love Ruth Gordon. She's so hilarious. And Jeffrey Lewis. I really like the guy that Clint fights at the end. Bill Smith is his name. He pretty cool a character actor. And he kind of has like that WWF Rick Rude type of physique. I think if it was a real fight, he probably would have beat Clint's ass. But it was really cool adversary for Clint, and then they become friends, so that's cool. But yeah, I love both films. They're really funny and really fun to watch, and I really like. This is another favorite Clint Eastwood movie. I just love, and yeah, just everything about it is great. I love the Black Widows. There's just so many fun characters in these two movies. I actually like this one better than the first one a little bit, I think. But they're both great. So now we're going to go probably to, again, another best sequel of all time, which is The Empire Strikes Back. Now, along with Godfather 2, this is really the greatest sequel ever. For me, it's because I like Star Wars better than The Godfather, so to me, this is the greatest sequel of all time. And most people would say their favorite Star Wars movie of all time. I really like all the Star Wars movies for the most part. I mean, I'm not going to just follow in line with all the masses. Oh, if you're not a real Star Wars fan, if Empire Strikes Back isn't on. But, you know, there are lots of things about Empire Strikes Back that are my favorite, of course. The snow battle, you know, like the first 30 minutes of the movie is just amazing. I love Cloud City. I think that's like the coolest planet and the coolest city, and all the sets. The sets that are on Cloud City are just so cool. The chamber, the carbonite chamber, and the hallways and corridors of the Lando's facility. It's just really cool. I just love the way it looks. My favorite piece of music is actually the Battle of Hoth. Everybody else would say, the Imperial March. But, that gets played over all the time. So my favorite is the Battle of Hoth. I think that's my favorite John Williams piece. It's just so cool and badass. It's like the perfect piece of music for the Battle of Hoth. It's just so cool, and the way it builds, and it's great. Everything John Williams does is awesome. Just everything. But, that's my favorite Star Wars piece of music is the Battle of Hoth. I just think that is just such a cool, awesome theme. But everything's great about this. This is definitely the greatest sequel of all time. Just everything, the story and all the characters and the settings. You go to several different planets. You go to Hoth, you go to Dagobah, you go to Bespin. So it's really what I love about the original Star Wars trilogy. You get to see all these cool planets and action sequences and battles and everything. Just almost everybody loves Star Wars, and this is definitely the greatest sequel ever is The Empire Strikes Back. And of course, Godfather Part 2 would make a close second. But I'm biased because I'm a big time Star Wars fan. So yeah. So next we'll go again horror and go to Halloween 2. Along with Jaws 2, this is probably one of the best horror sequels of all time. Again, doesn't come close to the original, but I think it holds up really well. And I think the reason why I like Halloween 2 a lot is because it still has most of the main cast. You still have Donald Pleasance and Jamie Lee Curtis together, even though they only usually meet up with each other at the end of the films. But, the other films, it was either just Donald Pleasance by himself from part 4 through 6, or Jamie Lee by herself from H2O Resurrection and the new one coming out. So this one, you have both of them. The only sequel where they're together, and it's a 10 Seconds Later sequel, and which I like that idea. All the other sequels like Jaws 2 and other horror sequels, it's always like 5 years later, 10 years later, but this one is 10 Seconds Later, which is cool. And it builds nicely. There's a lot of suspense. It's a little bit more slasher though, quite a bit more of a slasher film than the original. The original was more suspense, a suspense thriller, even though a lot of people still consider the original Halloween a slasher film. This one is quite a bit more slasher than the original, but still a lot of suspense. It's just only the first two Halloweens scared me. None of the other sequels really scared me. I mean, part 4 is good, but the mask was just god awful. So, I mean, stuff like that. But really, the first two Halloweens are the only ones that really scared me. But yeah, this one's great. And to me, this is really the end of the series. I mean, Even though there's H2O, there's part 4, there's the new one, there's all these timelines. To me, this is really the end of the movie, or the end of the series. I think, to me, this is where Halloween ends. But still, I like all the Halloween movies to a certain extent, but this is the best sequel, and the best horror sequel, the best slasher sequel, and I'd put this number 1, and then Jaws 2 would be the next best horror sequel within the horror genre, and this would be the number 1 for the slasher subgenre, I guess you could say. But yeah, so, and this one will surprise you, though. Some of you might be surprised with Halloween 3. I actually like Halloween 3. Of course, like most people, I didn't like Halloween 3 when I first saw it. I was like, what the fuck is this shit? This is the weirdest shit I've ever seen. But with time, it kind of grows on you. And I watch Halloween 3 more than I watch H2O or 5 or 6 or whatever, Resurrection or whatever. I think it feels like a John Carpenter film, even though Tommy Lee Wallace directed it, but he still used Dean Cundey and the most of the crew from the first 2 anyway. So it's basically like a John Carpenter film, and it's different. That's my thing. It's weird, and there is some 80s cornballness and cheesiness with it, but it's not that bad. I think the reason why I like Halloween 3 is I love the season of Halloween and the setting of Halloween, because it's my favorite holiday. Even though Michael Myers isn't in it, it's unique, and it's not really predictable. I think movies that I like are unique and not predictable. I automatically like. My biggest pet peeve with a movie is something that's predictable. That's my biggest pet peeve with any movie of any genre, is if they're freaking predictable. But this one really isn't. It's different. It's not another Jason clone or Michael Myers clone like all the other shit that came out in the 80s. It's unique and it stands alone, and I think that's why I added it to my list. So now we're going to go to another sequel, obviously, because it's my sequel video, and go with Aliens, one of my favorite sequels of all time. And I think, now with James Cameron, I think a lot of people would put Terminator 2, and I understand that. I do like Terminator 2 better than the first Terminator, but I actually like Aliens better. I guess that puts me in the minority, I guess, because most people like Terminator, but I like the Alien movies better. I like Ripley better than Sarah Connor. It's just, I don't know, I like her better. I just like these movies better for some reason. But Aliens is just like Empire Strikes Back. I could do a whole video on this. I love the cast, the Marines, Vasquez, Hicks. All the Marines are so cool. Sarge, Ripley, of course. I love the just everything. The Queen, the Hive, the colony, the story. It's just an epic, probably along with Empire Strikes Back, the second best, I would say, be Empire Strikes Back and Aliens as far as sci-fi sequels go. It would be Aliens, second place next to Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, hands down. So I love everything about Aliens. I used to watch it all the time. Like, I remember when I was like 8 years old, I watched it like tons of times along with Star Wars. Just love it. And here's another unique one, another part 3. Alien 3. Again, kind of like The Godfather 3, this movie gets a lot of hate. But I think it's unique. You really cannot, after Alien and Aliens, it's like, it doesn't really get better than those two, so it's really hard to try to make anything as epic as the first 2 Alien films. But I think it's a unique film, kind of like Halloween 3. It's unique, it kind of grows on you, and I think the assembly producer cut, whatever it's called, is better than the theatrical version by far. The assembly cut. If you want to watch Alien 3, watch the assembly cut version on Blu-ray or DVD. That's the better version for sure. But it's not that bad as people say it is. I think it's unique, and it's interesting. It's the anti-Alien in Aliens because you can't really redo those. So I think they went in the right direction with doing something different with Alien 3. And lastly, Home Alone 2. We're going to go to down the family route here with Home Alone 2. I think, I just think it's a good sequel. It's cute. Maybe not as good as the first one, but I like how there's 2 sets of villains. You got, Harry and Marv, and then you got the concierge with Tim Curry in the hotel. I think that was cool. So he has more than one villain to go after. It's cute. It's not as good as the first Home Alone, but it's still really, really good. And, it's great. I watch it every year along with the first one, just like every Halloween. I watch Halloween 1 and 2. But yeah, I think it's a good sequel. It's, you know, my childhood because I'm a 90s kid. So yeah, lots of product placement in these films. But anyway, those are my favorite sequels. Let me know what you think. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.